to share some local color with Sandy. It's very important not only to the chamber and to the companies that we represent. Now we're recording, so watch what you say. But I know that Sandy has some very poignant things she wants to talk about, and I think that Sandy, this one probably becomes something, a contributor to something much larger than just this local conversation. So thank you for being here, and with that,
thank you. Gosh, you're so kind. But you, like I'm buddies with Miss Kasurik here, pen pals for a few weeks. She can do anything. Appreciate it. There were several on the phone too, on the line, Zoom. I'll introduce myself very briefly, and then for y'all all know each other, but folks on the phone, you need to know them, they didn't know you. So I'll just start. I'm Sandy Doten. I'm from Austin. I've done all kinds. I've retired from IBM at the end of 2019. I was corporate social responsibility for 4 states. I'm going to go back on their payroll part-time stuff during the legislative session, but that's a whole other issue. Didn't expect that. But for that, I was with the Austin Chamber doing government relations and community development and education. I was on the workforce board for Austin Travis County for longer than I should say, because it was a long time. I just love that intersection of economic development and helping people develop. The mission was fantastic. Cynthia reminded me that a long time ago, I helped co-found actually a statewide child care advocacy group that later folded into Texans Care for Children, one of the groups that represented in this coalition. So what else? Oh, I've worked at a couple other things. I'm a non-technician, can't fix anything. I can sure promote and talk and try to connect. And, economic development is huge, and without the good education and workforce system, you're just not at full throttle. It's as easy as that. So I love working on issues when you connect with kind of those hard issues and kids and families with business. It's a magical position to be in. So enough about me. We have folks on the phone. Tom is my partner in crime from Austin, who is so smart. Tom, why don't you introduce yourself to the Knox and Colby, and I see half a head. I don't see the whole head of the next person.
Thanks, Sandy, and thank you all in the room. Wish I could be there. I had a City of Austin Commission meeting this morning. So I'm Tom Hedrick. As Sandy said, I'm on the volunteer and a steering committee for the Prenatal to 3 collaborative. So it's an across Texas collaborative. And my day job is a private equity investor here in Austin. I guess over to you, Kobe.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Abilene. So good to see you all. My name is Colby Monig. I'm the Texas State Director for Council for a Strong America. Today in the capacity of Ready Nation, which is our business leader member organization that advocates for early childhood education issues. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Colby. Are y'all hearing that at all? Okay. You're struggling to hear? Okay, well, yeah.
All right, Sandy.
Is a business guy. I heard McKinsey for a long time, and one of the smartest people I know. And Colby is with a group called Ready Nation, which is also an advocacy group, very much a part of the states. Knox, you want to go next? Just introduce.
Sure, Sandy, thank you very much, and many thanks to the Abilene Chamber and United Way Abilene for hosting this gathering. I'm Knox Kimberly. I'm the interim CEO of Tex for Tex, which is one of the 3 lead organizations for the statewide collaborative, and we're delighted to have you with us today. And I'm truly sorry, just like Tom, to have had conflicts that prevented me from being there in person.
Well, thank you, Knox. And let's see, who else? Gloria? I see your name. Are you there? All right. I see a half a head of someone without a name. Who?
That would be Kelly J.
Oh, okay. Okay. Kelly, please introduce yourself. Kelly's one of the business leaders for those on the phone right now. One of our outstanding business leaders here, and his wife is sitting right here as well. So she was telling me they do a little bit of everything. I think they own half the town, but half the businesses, and they counsel the other half. Is that a good enough description? Is that a good PR advertising?
Yes.
All right, good deal. Well, so you've heard this thing, PN3 Collaborative. It's really made up of 3 organizations, some of which you may have heard of, maybe not, but Children at Risk, Tex Protects, and Texans Care for Children, all in the children's advocacy space. I think, Knox, are you going to explain kind of what each of these groups does?
Yes, be delighted to do so, Sandy. Thank you very much. And the collaborative, while we have 3 lead organizations, actually consists of over 100 organizations across the state of Texas. And we are united in one population level goal, and that is to serve more than 400,000 additional infants and toddlers in Texas with health services, early child care and education services, and prevention and early intervention services by 2026. We are in the 3rd year of an initial 5-year plan made possible by a generous grant from the Pritzker Children's Initiative. There are, as mentioned, 3 statewide leads, and each of our 3 orgs have a specific bucket, if you will, of policy concerns that we are leading. The Healthy Beginnings policy bucket is led by Texans Care for Children and is focused.
So who's supposed to be turning the slides? But we got some slides just to try to keep up. If we don't have them, that's fine. There we go. Good.
There we go. Okay, so we've sorry about that. We have covered that slide. So now we're on the right slide. Perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry. So the Healthy Beginnings policy that you see depicted here, led by Texans Care for Children, and that focuses on expanding access to pregnant and postpartum moms and children, while also ensuring continuous healthcare coverage for children who are enrolled in Medicaid or the Children's Health Insurance Program known as CHIP. The Early Care and Education policy bucket is led by Children at Risk, and that is focused on ensuring access to quality childcare for Texas children and their families. Finally, Tex Protects leads the Supported Families bucket, which focuses on ensuring that families have access to the supportive services they need at the right time, such as voluntary home visitation services, resource and referral networks, and early childhood intervention for children experiencing disabilities or developmental delays. So we embarked on, through the leadership of our business advisory group led by Sandy and Tom, with a listening tour, and today is our 8th session. And these are focused on the non-large metro areas of Texas. And we are doing so in an effort to draw audiences of business and community leaders who understand their individual communities, just as all of you in the room do so well in the Abilene community, and the needs of the community around early childhood, childcare, and how these issues are affecting the workforce and the local economy. We are also recruiting, please keep this in mind as we go through the conversation today, recruiting a business leader from each area to serve on the Business Advisory Board, which was recently formally launched. And that board will be helping us, working alongside us in advancing our legislative agenda in the 88th Texas legislature that will convene in January, and continue to advise the collaborative on how these issues intersect with business needs. So that's why we're here today. Delighted that all of you have taken the time to join us. And with that, I believe I will turn the mic back over to Sandy, because he is going to present some information about the return on investment that these policies in these 3 bucket areas are capable of producing. Sandy, all yours. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for delineating everything. You see how it all ties together, but with specific focus areas for each of these organizations. And this is an open up thing, but we're just going to run through the rest of these very quickly so we can learn about you all. You probably know this, and some of you live this, read this, but when these prenatal 3 programs are effective, they really can pay for themselves. On the next slide, you'll see a couple of stats. Nobel Prize winning economist James Heckman, there he is, that getting this early start for these little kiddos is as important as K through 12 and beyond. In fact, I'm sure you've all heard the statistic. I forget it exactly, but you know, a kid from a middle class plus family knows, you probably know it, 500,000 words by the time they're 3, and a lower income kid knows 5,000. It's not the exact number, but it's a huge gap. And yeah, you can bring those kids up, but there's still going to be a gap. You don't get to them early enough and give them what they need to really get them started. Financial return of up to 13% for these programs. And then another study from the Rand Corporation, a return of $2 to $4 for every dollar spent on well-designed and implemented high-quality childhood programs. There are other studies I always used to hear about, the Perry study, Cynthia, you probably know about, but the national studies show 7 to 1, 8 to 1, 10 to 1. So these programs can really pay for themselves plus when they're done right. Colby would like to add another stat or two that her organization, Ready Nation, has produced and researched. Colby, on the next slide.
Thanks, Andy. Can y'all hear me okay?
Colby.
Can
Yeah,
y'all
go
hear
ahead.
me? Yeah, okay. All right, awesome. So Ready Nation surveyed nationally a bunch of business owners, and we came back with a ton of information, but this is the large takeaway here, and this is Texas specific. So basically the annual cost due to a lack of reliable childcare for children age birth to 3 in Texas has an annual impact of $4.9 billion on the Texas economy, and that's due to lost productivity and wages. The United States Chamber of Commerce did a similar study at the same time that we did this study, and they went 0 to 6 years old in Texas alone, and their number was double this number. So it was good to have those two side by side to show that they complement one another. So there's a lot that we can do here in Texas to ensure that we regain this $4.9 billion. And to Sandy's point, whenever you make investments in early childhood, the return of investment is absolutely there. And our economy can benefit if we take care of our youngest kids here in Texas.
Good deal, Colby. Thank you very much for that. On the next slide, you'll see it's a little busy, but let's walk through it together. These are old numbers from 2016. On the one hand, I could guess they're about in the same position now, or they could be different post-COVID. It could be very interesting, but this is the women's labor force participation rate. And you'll see between 55 and 60% there, and you'll see Texas. And this is how Texas compares to other states in the number of women in the workforce. And the message here is that we probably would have more people in the workforce if some of the folks who want to work had better childcare arrangements for whatever reason. And so this is kind of to illustrate that childcare does have an impact on the availability of people to work. Men too, but a lot of times it falls to women from that point of view. On the next page, there's a very recent study that came out just a few weeks ago from the Texas Women's Foundation. This is an entity based in Dallas. They do a lot of work, a lot of research on women, but this is a really interesting stat from last year that a third of Texas women with kids under 5 were unable to attend childcare arrangements because of different issues. And therefore, A lot of women, 29% cut their work hours. Others use vacation days or paid leave to care for children. Some just said, I just can't find a job. I can't find something that pays based on the childcare tuition, et cetera. They juggled jobs, they juggled supervising kids while working. And even a few lost their jobs because they had time away. It just wasn't satisfactory for them being able to continue their work. So these are real issues, and we have to figure these things out. Some more material on the next page. There's an organization called the Prenatal to 3 Policy Impact. A woman named Cynthia Osborne runs this. She was based in Austin at UT at the LBJ School of Public Affairs. Vanderbilt University stole her from us, the nerve. But she's still doing this work. It's a national perspective she has. There are certain policies that aren't delineated here, but they look at different childcare policies across states, and they consider effective, and we have implemented none of those. And you'll see that we're kind of in the bottom 10% on some of these outcome measures. Kids Count is an annual survey that's done also across the country. In Texas was 45 out of 50. I just heard something over the last weekend. New Mexico a few years ago was 50 out of 50. And it galvanized them to do some amazing policy changes, some appropriations from oil and gas funds they have directly into childcare. As our workforce solutions folks know, a lot of our childcare is it happens through childcare agencies that are overseen by workforce solutions. This is the childcare for people who are lower income, people in job training. In Austin, I know it's about 3,000 kids a day. I don't know what is it here? How many kids do you all have? Kind of something to do with 1,800. It's probably like the largest provider of childcare collectively, probably except for the Air Force Base, is through Workforce Solutions, really across the state. And so the reimbursement rates that the workforce boards are able to utilize for the child care centers, for those centers that reserve slots for kids who qualify under these programs, those reimbursement rates are very, very low. New Mexico, for instance, it's their next door state, they're increasing those reimbursement rates. Because right now, a lot of these childcare workers can make less than a lot of people working for you all. It's just supply and demand. It kind of breaks supply and demand. With more demand, you think it would raise salaries. It does some, but other salaries go up further. Anyway, enough of that. But New Mexico, watch that space, doing some very interesting things. And then Texas 2036 is an effort out of based in Dallas. Tom Luce and former Secretary of Education Margaret, just blanked out on Margaret's last name. I know her well. Sorry. Yes, thank you. God, I have stage fright. They do a lot of data. Advocacy around lots of different data in different areas, long term. And our 4th grade reading scores aren't so hot, and our kids' health outcomes aren't as good as they should be. So what the 3 groups, Kimberly, that Knox and others described to you, have come up generally with some main on the next slide, some what they call the Texas Plan. How's that for an original name? Right? But looking at these areas, access to prenatal and postpartum health services. The last legislative session took a step in this direction. Y'all recall, a lot of you probably were involved with it, by expanding Medicaid for new moms for 6 months. It had been 2 months for lower income moms. They looked for expanding it by a year. Texas House passed it for a year. There were some issues in the Senate and they settled on 6 months. Well, the House Speaker has already declared that he wants to try again and have it cover for a year. So that would be an example of this first one. Next one, ensure universal screening and successful connection. Prevention and early intervention. There's a program the State Health and Human Services Department runs, where they actually go visit families home and help with different coaching and counseling. It's a relatively small program. You can make an argument that can be boosted and serve more kids and again get them ready for different for schooling. High quality early child care and education. The child care centers that work with Workforce Solutions. There's the Texas Workforce Commission that administers these programs. Has what they call the Texas Rising Star Program. Have you all heard of that? Probably have. It's a quality, yeah, I'm sure. Cynthia, are you're in that? 4-star, 4 out of 4. Good for you.
All four.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you're the role model. And so there are different varying levels of it's a you have to go through this survey. What is it, every year or
You have to reassess.
every year?
And they just changed the criteria.
Yeah.
Pretty in depth. But
Pretty
we're
in
going
depth.
through it again.
And centers in this workforce solutions don't have to be Rising Star, but legislation bipartisan passed last time says yes, they have to. It gives them several years to get there and the training and all that. And hopefully it's a care, it's a stick. You have to do it, but with a lot of carrots to help. So that was a big deal last session. And then the last one here is eliminate inequities that create barriers to accessing these services. If you're a mom, you may not know what your kid might qualify for. And you can make a good argument about some sort of way to coordinate the application processes, START or childcare or any number of programs. How do you access where do I go? And that's a state level, not a criticism, but can we just make these processes more efficient? So then on the last slide, and so that's kind of the game plan. The last slide, this was really a lot of Tom Hedrick's idea. You got all these great advocates and social service people who are very experts. Well, they're business people who care about these issues too. And so can we engage some business leaders from across the state to help advocate, to at least be a sounding board? What makes sense to you? May not be 30 items on a legislative agenda that every organization seems to come up, not 30, but several, but can we hone these to maybe a couple, 3 or 4? And so in the last several months, we have held sessions like this, as you heard Tom say, across the state, larger cities, but more particularly some of the outside the triangle, so to speak, because we want to get some variety, some diversity, and so really, that's kind of where we are. You'll see some of these board members. You got a chamber exec from Odessa. You got a chamber fellow from Houston, Peter Baird, who does a lot of work for this. But you have the head of PNC Bank for the state, and Mimo Trevino. I think it's a beer distribution business, family business. And so just a variety of people there. Danny King was an amazing superintendent for the school district down in Valley. He's now running their education service center down there. He is a pro. So business people who, and some people who've been around the business. So really, that's the presentation. And what I wanted to do, what we want to do, is just listen to you all. You've heard enough of me rolling on. Lauren was nice enough to send me your survey, the legislative issue survey, and I saw the child care, workforce development, workforce access was there on several bullets, and there are times where the two are connected, right? And so just in general, what are your big issues here with child care? What do you see? Do you have enough? You got Cynthia, you got other places. Do you feel like there are shortages? What are the challenges? I really want to just throw this open. That you all see this, that some of these issues or some of these areas we've been talking about might be able to be helpful. Who wants to?
I would doubt if we are in what is seen around the state. Several of us have community foundation, Night Away, or studied or have studied. I know the military partners has studied because it's unique their unique work schedules and demands on them. We have a current community child care coalition. A couple involved in child care and somewhere or the other. One's a pastor who had a big tragedy and his church, and the other's a professor. And so we are looking at that. I think we have a waiting list because can't find workers, and I'm sure that's very typical of every other place. In that it's pay and benefits and things like that. I think as a community, we are good at coming together and solving really complex issues. And I know that we will. But I guess that's my global perspective on it.
That's great. Good. Any other thoughts?
Well, I will say
Yeah.
there are not enough providers. Not enough providers. And workforce is a very, the workforce is very,
Just the presence.
the reimbursement rates have been an issue, but I know that's being addressed. I'm sure that you're aware of Cynthia Osborne and her team led the strategic planning effort for childcare workforce. In fact, we just received our draft of all those meetings and all that. So, but
Well,
they,
that was under one of the other piece of legislation passed.
Right.
This big stuff.
that's correct.
Just came out.
Yeah, we just got our draft last week.
Last
And, and our last meeting was in August. So there's gonna be some time to start yet, but anyway, it's all important. And we have looked at New Mexico. That was a big Virginia. So like 4 states we looked at really close. New Mexico's one that's done, an awful lot. Peter Beard is the one that I had heard in March when we had to speak to the chamber. And he was the one that said, your community benefits from childcare, they need to be placed. And so that's when I said, changing, you benefit from what we do, whether you're a school district or your business or whatever, coming for it. So he's
He's good. He's
awesome.
good. Yeah, he's a good guy. I'll ask just a random program. Obviously, we depend on government for some things, and the survey and others is we don't want too much government. And I get that. Business people think that way, which don't like too much regulation. You mentioned the reimbursement rates. I'm just going to throw out. I'm not here to advocate hard shell, but the way the program works, the Workforce Solutions is that most of this money is from the federal government, childcare development, and the state puts up some money to be able to attract the federal. And some local governments, I know in Austin, the county and the city put in a little bit, but it's mostly federal funding. And you could say, well, gee, should the state put in more into that to raise the salaries and or cover more kids? It's a balancing out between slots, number of people, kids you cover, and quality. You want to have quality programs, training. And you want the center operators to have a little margin of profit. So they can stay in business. So would something like that go over at all? Gee, state, you got a big surplus, because everyone's been spending that surplus 8,000 ways. Everyone wants that issue, education. But would there be any appetite you all have for that or something like that, or you really haven't probably thought of it? Any thoughts on it? I'm not just in the formal survey. Trying to get some gut feels.
I don't want to be the only person.
Yeah.
But I will say, my first was in public ed, now I'm in nonprofit. All of the statistics that are touted about what we're wanting in the state are important, but so many of them that I've spent my career on, we're 50, we're 49. You follow the money, And where the state spends money is what we're doing well. And so your slide about Texas being in the bottom on reading and everything is reflective of how much our politicians and our legislators spend and focus on those issues. I love what they're doing in the economic development issue, and that's integral to our families, but we are not doing the same in social services. And we spend a lot of our donor money on social services, minding gaps that in other states, state pays for, whether it's expanding Medicaid or just across the board. We are meeting basic needs that in other places, states are doing.
Real quick, just because there's a few in the chat, and I know the individual that has been chatting. Hi, Abby. From a young professional perspective, I've shared my story about accessing childcare with my two boys. Cynthia knows it very well because I've chatted with her every time I see her about it. But Jasmine is in the room, and Danielle has a unique perspective in that she's a foster mom. And I know, I hope you're okay with me sharing this, but I know firsthand that she's had to turn away fostering children because she's unable to find childcare. So I would just love to hear Jasmine and Danielle's perspective because Abby, I think it follows very similarly for what you're facing with your newborn. Oh, come on, Jasmine, give it in. Okay. Oh, thanks.
All of my colleagues that I have several friends that have decided to stay home because actually it's more expensive to pay for my child. I don't have anything that, that's something groundbreaking this year.
Both you and Reg, you're working.
Yeah, and we don't have family here.
And you're organizing childcare.
So it's a challenge.
Thanks for being here, Jasmine.
By the way, you would, which university? Abilene Prison. I saw on the news, local news last night. Bury. Yeah. They raised their parental leave to 12 weeks. That's a big deal. So that's a big investment. All right, but let's hear from you.
Yeah, I echo all of the things. It's the kind of the same thing everybody has said. I think it's interesting how just one issue affects another issue. So, my husband and I decided passionately that we want to be part of impacting children who come from hard places. We got involved in that before the whole Roe v. Wade got overturned, and we were more passionate about it even then because we wanted to be part of the change. That's going to affect a lot of people by that specific decision. And now they're needing to have children and then more in foster care. And then how do we help those kids too? But then whenever we get the call for placements and I follow up with calling the 25 agencies I have on the list, no one has any spots available on the list, and the waiting list is very long. We do have to consistently train. It's a challenge, and it hurts my heart too, as much as any other. As a matter of fact, everything to be nursery we not had the opportunity to place our two that we've just gotten at the nursery. We would have had to train them too. I mean, they inevitably would have had to go to other communities and other counties. They don't get to stay local. They don't get to stay and be a part of the support already in place. So it's almost like a domino effect.
When you say turn away kids in foster.
Yes, so in the foster system, they contact our agency. The agency reaches out to them and for that age range. And consistently, we're not the only family. A lot of them have to be because We don't have childcare. So then the agency tries really hard to keep kids in our county. But if there's no availability for childcare, you see other counties, and no go to other families, in other places that have people. In other agencies. And we do try and meet those needs higher.
So in question, so oftentimes though, when you say in the surrounding area, it's gonna expand outside of our service area, correct? Because it's not just a Abilene deal, it's
Yes.
right.
Sometimes we'll get kids down. The place where we have before these woods. So it's a completely different county between us and then we have to go. This time it's done well. It's our going.
For those on Zoom, I just remembered I did something really ridiculous. I forgot to ask all of you to introduce yourselves so they know who's talking and who's doing what, but you're with Goodwill.
With Goodwill, yeah.
But Anna Foster Care and runs a very big, successful childcare center here with 4 locations and United Way CEO. And sir, mind us for the.
Yeah, with that,
Good. And you have a thought or two? You're gonna.
No, I mean, you know, it's, we love, you know, it's, you know, a child care. Cynthia, and when you, or somebody mentioned earlier about the local church affiliations and efforts that are going on there, like Plain Beltway as an example, and David's goals to expand and do this. Are y'all, is there a partnership there or?
We can discuss the partnership with them. But we fully support what they're doing.
Sure.
In fact, I testified in front of the city council that we make the zoning change because it was opposition. Randy Turner said, hey, I do need your help. That's fine. That's what we did. So I gave stats on how many people in the workforce, how many childcare spaces there were. Share those with Ray. For some things he was working on. And that a nursery cannot meet this total. There needs to be more people coming together.
And so is there more a outside of that, other than their current efforts?
Their priority wants to be.
And that's what they're driving. Is to keep it, the positivity vibes. That positivity. They're working on it. In a particular way. I realize how I'm not there, but I can't wait for it.
That's in the Brook Hall.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to overplay this hand, but you know, I think that not only is this an issue that impacts the business community, but it also, I think, has some impact on national security. I say that Diocese has a way of taking care of itself and the community, they're the backstop, whatever needs they have. But when, and Greg and I met this morning, and he gave me an analogy that if a maintainer on the B1 can't show up to get that B1 prepared to fly, not only do they not get the training they need, but on the day that they're called to service, they may not be prepared or even have the equipment that they need. So from my perspective, that is an issue. So, Greg, you want to share just a little bit about all that you've been doing?
You're right here with the military affairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry. So the mic is coming from here, so just.
So, you know, we've been at this for a couple of years. Actually, Don Martin, he got called to Colonel Young, Young, who had a child care deficiency at ISR. So we started taking a deep look at this, work with Mary and Cynthia, and there's a huge child care deficiency. And like Doug said, it's a national security.
Supplies, I thought military.
They do, but it's just. So it goes back to federal funding. So they can file a jet fuel you want, but can't add on to the CDC. riches that you can't add on to child. Yes. So that's a problem, and we are looking at it. Katie Alford's on our military exec committee as well as Sean. So we've gotten a lot of good efforts and a lot of good traction moving forward for a solve the problem on diet airport.
Imagine it's not just diets, it's a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's,
everybody.
it's US Air Force. Or it's
Sandy?
It's the DOD thing, and you know what the previous Secretary of the Air Force said, and again, not to focus on the military, but you know, we focus our missions and our service areas and base decisions, basing decisions and on schools and childcare, you know, and job availability. So they're looking at those things, and when you have an airman or, you know, whatever, say, we can't get into a childcare. With affecting my spouse's employment, I don't want to be based there. We can't fulfill a mission. It's a snowball effect.
Sandy?
Can you hear? Oh, go ahead, Knox.
That's what I was going to ask Sandy to, Mary Christopher in the chat has asked for the opportunity for the Christophers to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. We are sorry we are not there today. We are both recovering from COVID and didn't want to make any of you in danger. We've had a mild case and we're at the good end, but we're being very cautious today. But we are heading up the Coalition for Quality Childcare in Abilene that is trying to get organizations that are working on these issues together to talk together about solutions. So we're very interested in what you all have done in that you have merged several organizations to work on issues. And we want to do that locally. The piece that I would like to kind of jump off of is the mention about Beltway, that churches in this community do a lot of social care and concern for people. And one of those areas is childcare. Many churches in this area have offered quality childcare for years. Our church is First Baptist, and we actually are building a new center so we can expand the availability of childcare. But our concern is, will we have workers who will be able to fill those positions so we can expand the opportunity for children there? And so that's a big issue for us in the church community. But I think it's something that together we can work on and solve. And of course, we're finding the same things you all have found. The low pay for childcare workers makes it hard to build that community. And also we need additional training for those people. And I know that Workforce Solutions provides money to cover a lot of that cost for people, but we don't always get that word out, and that people don't know that can be paid for. And so it's something I think we can work on together to solve, but there are issues that we need to focus on. I don't know if you want to add anything, Phil.
Well, again, we are learning like everybody else. And so through United Way and our involvement there, we're just trying to bring people together. We're not trying to usurp anything that's been happening. We're trying to create really a community network of putting people together. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I do think too of how we even begin to elevate, a childcare worker, babysitter, how we begin to even address their teachers at one of the most important moments in a child's life. And so there are just so many aspects, but I think part of it too is just how we begin to elevate in our community's mind that what a vocation to go into. We were talking one of our meetings, you see these commercials that say, give your life to be a Marine. Maybe we need some of those like that, some PSA announcements that said, you want to make a difference, be a teacher. like this. So we're wanting to bring in with Cynthia and trying to get people together. We're just starting. And so again, that's what we see our role of just bringing an Abilene coalition together and working with those in the state that have done this and with legislative issues that need to be addressed.
And we're grateful that
Yeah.
you are addressing it in the legislature because that's an area that needs to be addressed. Some of what Kathy said, that part of the reason we are where we are with fourth grade reading scores is the level of funding that we have reduced statewide. I read a statistic today that it's gone down 25%. And so that's K through 12 education that we've reduced the funding from the state and put more on shoulders of local entities. And so we've got to look at funding issues in some way. And I'm too, I don't want more government funding necessarily, but we may have to figure out a way to restructure funding that's already there and make sure it goes to the right places to change not only families' lives, but businesses. This is an economic issue too, not just a family issue. So thank you for giving us a chance to talk.
Well, thank you both. Fantastic. Really appreciate that. Yeah, so that's the quandary. Would you say from a chamber, from a business point of view, this is hurting business? Is it hurting business expansion?
I can speak
Please.
on our, I have 7 children and 14 grandchildren. I have, in my employment, I have, well, my son is now a police officer, but I have a daughter who has 2 small children. She has to work and I have to work on schedules to watch her children. She does not make enough to afford childcare. She's a single mom. She cannot afford childcare. I have a new baby being born in January. I will be taking off and working nights at my business while I take care of my newborn grandchild, where my daughter can go back to work. There's just the cost for a single parent, or the cost for even a parent to put their children in. My son makes a decent salary with the police department. She makes a decent salary. It still takes her whole paycheck. So why her work? She works for her sanity. She works for her sanity. I was a child care provider for about 11 years. I taught in private child care, and we went from preschool to 2nd grade. I taught preschool and pre-K. We did absolutely wonderful. Our kids were great. The problem we seen was during childcare is that you could not keep childcare workers, and the ones that were there had been not trained well enough, underpaid, and you've seen that with the children because they come home. Well, Miss Sandy's in a bad mood. She was in a bad mood today, so we all sat and did this. You know, you see that those children tell all. They tell all about their family lives, because as a child care provider, we're the first to hear what's going on in your household. Good and bad, we hear it all.
That's why the quality has to be elevated.
The quality
And that's why
has to
there's a
be
requirement
elevated.
For any CCS providers to be part of Star.
Yes.
You can find it inexpensive.
Oh, you can. Matter of
It's
fact,
not-
my grandson's going to Abilene Christian Schools right now because we found he will not be back there. I can't believe they're still going. We filed a police report.
Yeah, but the challenge with that is that if they, and Cynthia, you can probably speak to this more. My sister, whenever she moved to town, was doing a bunch of research, and if they have so many infractions, then they can just come up under a new name and those won't show up or something like that. I think she found that with one child care provider on the Abilene Moms Facebook group.
You know,
Well, it's not, I will tell you, it is not an easy business to operate.
No,
I mean,
it's
it
not.
is not. And so if you're on the buying end of it, or you're on the providing end of it, it is expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're able to do, in our program, for less than $35 a day or $36 a day. I mean, you figure someone is there 9 hours a day. That is, you can get really high quality childcare for less than $4 an hour.
Yeah.
That's very good.
That's good.
And I will tell you, our board has
last year came up with a study, and you probably, your website, it's the tuition for childcare often exceeds tuition for community college.
Yeah.
That blew me away. People have years to save for college, but not when you have a new kid and you're.
Yeah.
New family starting.
So we have to get those children ready for school because we have to be able to impact reading, and all of that. I mean, that's what a high quality program is to be able to do. We have to have the right talent in the workforce.
We lost a couple of the guys there. Let me, so from a. I hear you. We hear you. It's a big issue here. You got specific local needs, which are wonderful to know. So, sorry to know, but good to know. And from the policy point of view, from this PN3 business advisor, we would love someone from your midst to help us with this. It's not a heavy lift. We're not talking about weekly calls or you have to do 30 things. It's probably every other a month, every couple of months, getting on a phone and comparing notes and what's palatable. If you know Senator so-and-so or State so-and-so, and there's a bill up for a hearing, a friendly call or something like that. So, it's the Texas Association of Business has a lot of the chambers that take care of as childcare is a general bullet point in this I work with them. And I'm sure y'all are farming. Good. And so you're there and right. Question is you get closer to the session. What's doable, what's possible, what's palatable? And what's that balance? You can't you can't have a revolution. I worked for Boston time in technology. Evolution is on the way to revolution. We're getting all of these centers, Texas Rising Star, that's an evolutionary thing. You can have some really good results longer term. What are some other evolutionary? The legislature doesn't work in revolutions, it's evolutionary.
Reimbursement rates, we're not doing it. Yeah, I would use them.
Oh.
For 12 years, we don't watch.
Used to do it.
18 months a day.
Well, I hear the need here, and how can we help? How can we help each other? Lots of motivated people on the call and list these organizations. What do you think y'all's role? Obviously, y'all know your state rep, your senator. From the Dallas point of view, that's a congressional appropriation, military appropriations. I'm a nerd policy.
Sorry to interrupt, Lauren and Sandy, if you can hear us, do you mind speaking up a little bit louder?
Kind of closing thought. Having trouble hearing, you've got a.
Thank you all for your patience. We're having some technical difficulties here. Lauren, if you can hear us. It looks like the screen is frozen and the audio is also frozen. So if you don't mind repeating what was shared.
You ask about how you can help us and for our, what we're trying to do, I think, to continue communicating with us about what is happening that you're trying to accomplish, particularly as we move closer to the legislative session and how we can work together to advocate for that. Because we know that's a piece of the puzzle. That's not going to solve all of it, but that is a piece of the puzzle. But also just as you find things out, it's helpful for us. I know that as we've been studying this issue, we've looked at other cities in Texas and how they've approached some of these issues that's informed us as we're forming our committee and are beginning to look at that. It helps for us to, not reinvent the wheel and look at some other similar sized communities and how they're dealing with some of these issues. We've even looked at other states and what state they've done at the state level. And so I think just to continue to share with us, and I don't know, we'll go to your website if you have a website and we'll look for that information. But if we can have just a communication stream would be helpful.
For sure. Okay, we'll work on that. That's a good message.
Cindy, we can give it to chamber too, to be there when there's an opportunity to advocate at State House with any of our elected officials. It is, Katie will find this out when we have our executive meeting, meeting next week. But that is an important part of our legislative agenda that impacts so many. We also have the ability to reach out to some of those who are impacted. So if we need people in Austin to be able to speak to something, we've got real cases of business.
Yeah. Oh, that would be really. One thing before the session, I'm making this up. How many state reps in the county or just surrounding? So
One and maybe neighboring
got a
counties.
resident in Lambert.
Yeah.
A few others in
There.
Which is doing a little section, sort of like this. With them, one of the reps.
We just did that. Yeah, we have ongoing dialogue with Senator Perry, but I think it was this week that we sat down. No, it was last week. Sorry, it feels like this week. But it was last week we sat down and walked through our legislative agenda so that they would be aware. And that he has his legislative director on our business advocacy council. So they have a seat at that table as well.
Good. And you cover something as well. Absolutely. That's great.
Hi.
This has been exciting for me to. Anyone, Tom or Knox or Robin? Okay, sure. Hi.
Hi, this is Robin from Representative Lambert's office, and I'm having the same freezing problems. I apologize. I will be based in Austin this year. So I want to offer the coalition my assistance, of course. And those of you from the big country, if you would like to come testify or do that, of course, we would be happy to host you and let you hang out all day in our office while you're waiting for your turn. But if there's anything we can do, I think all of you have my cell phone number.
Okay, that's great. Good. Well, Robin, that's wonderful. I know this group will really appreciate that. And I know the organizations, the statewide groups appreciate that you'll be there. And I'm sure you will hear from them. That's excellent. Well, we all can do this together. The private sector solutions that are, certainly we got to look at the public sector. It's a partnership like most other things that we're working well. So y'all got the fire, and that's wonderful. Workforce solutions, folks, do y'all have any? Y'all aren't supposed to advocate. I'm not asking you to do that. But
But Mary can tell us what to say.
That's good. But anything you'd like to add to any of this situation?
A lot of, we have thing that our seniors have one accident. They had it's the number of if you raise the wages, what they need to do, the reimbursement rates, then he doesn't qualify for it. And so you've got to figure out strategies to say, yeah, no, that you're making too much money. But now if your child care goes up $300 a month, you're now in danger of quitting your job. So that's balance act. So same with any kind of frontline workers in healthcare or those populations and part of work. People in that
Well, look, this has been very limited, and I appreciate all the commitment. Data is so important, and anecdotes, very important. So thank you. You have anything you want to add?
No, I'm with Michelle down there. She knows a whole lot more about what we're doing on this side than we are. We're kind of trying, this is one of our many community issues we're trying to address and get more information and data on. So very important.
Anyone on the phone have any closing thoughts? Okay. Thank you all.
Sandy, thanks for letting us be.
Well, thank you for
Thank you all.
and even better